Okay, guys, can you hear? No?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes?
we can.
Oh.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go all over the stuff we had in previous sessions, plus in emails, plus in recent stuff we saw in the test. So I want to start from the TeamCity, not from the web tests, just to make sure everyone's are aligned. So to remind you, under the TeamCity trunk, we have the green, yellow, and red. The idea is that the green should be green, not like now. And the tray icon here is watching the green. It's also watching the green on other branches, like 6.0 and this Pro right now. Okay, if something fails under the green, we need to take responsibility as soon as possible. Hopefully the guy who failed the build will see it and take responsibility. I get notifications from the tray icon even before the build fails. On the first test that fails, it sends you a notification here, and then you can go and take responsibility even before everybody can see it. And also, when the build ends, it will send you email. So you should make sure you don't have any filters or something like that. If you do, it means you're not seeing any pop-up here. If you have filters on TeamCity emails, remove them or add another rule that gives you the envelope that pops in the middle of the screen. Otherwise, it's not so good, okay? Because you will see it too late. Also, if you have the tray icons hidden here, it will be visible. So it will be immediate, the notifications. If the guy who didn't fail take responsibility, so someone else, which is more responsible, or in case the guy is not next to the computer, can set him as responsible. The rule that we've set is that the last guy who check in is responsible to the build. It doesn't mean he needs to fix it. He just needs to understand who is more suitable than him and set him as responsible. So, for example, in we had the lots of -1. I'll talk about them. I don't need the fail build, sorry. You can see in the changes if there is more than one check-in. An example in this one. So the last guy is the guy in the top, and so he should be responsible to the build. But hopefully, the real responsible will set himself as investigator. How to set investigator? You go into the build itself. Not this one. Okay, we need something red. Okay, you go to the main page of the build or a specific build. You can do it from inside a specific build and just set investigate. After you fix it, okay. Usually when I fix something, I don't mark it as fixed. I let TeamCity change it for me as fixed. Previously I saw bugs with this thing that you set it as fixed, but someone else check in and there's some problem, so the build is marked as fixed, although it's not. So I'm not sure if this bug is still there. It was a while ago, but you don't need to mark as fixed when you fix it. TeamCity will change it for you. If you sometimes you check in and many builds start to fail. For example, the web tests, because you change something that affects everything. So it's hard to go build by build and set yourself as investigator. It also consumes a lot of time. So what you can do in this case, you should send email to everyone. Don't worry, I'm looking at it, and hopefully you should fix it in a very short time. If it's getting longer, then it's something more drastic. You probably have to set yourself investigate, so we can see the actual red. Okay, if there is a build which is not investigated, we see red here, and then if there's another build failing, no one will know about it. About the -1, -1 means that there was a problem in the build mechanism itself. For example, this build, it failed because it couldn't access the TFS. That's the most common problem for a -1. Also, sometimes part of the builds, they try to connect to DB01 to write NTM results. And sometimes there are network connectivity problems, and it will also fail on -1. In this case, again, the last guy who checked in should be responsible on this build. Usually, there's nothing much you can do. You can talk to IT, what happened to the network or something like that. But usually, it's something that it goes away by its own. So what you can do, if you're responsible, you can first of all set yourself as responsible, so it won't be red here, and we know that someone is responsible for this build. Second of all, you can queue another build. For example, if you think this is a network problem that probably was fixed by itself, you can run a new build, just so the red won't be red anymore. That's the idea. Time now. So you can run this build, put it on the queue top, because the queue can be very big and this can take a lot of time. And also specifying the dependencies, the last good CI, which is the topmost option. If you're not doing this, if you're taking the default, which is auto, and someone has just checked in, then this build, it will take time until it starts, because it will wait for the CI to end with the recent changes, and only after it ends, this build will start. So, for example, for this problem, I don't care about recent changes. I just want the red to go because it was a network problem. So I'm going to take the last good CI. I'm going to run it. I've marked it as a good build on top. And I'm going to free some room for it, because the agents are occupied with other builds. So I'm going to look for red builds and stop them. And that's the meaning of the difference between the red and the yellow. Yellow means someone is investigating this build, so he wants the build to run. And red, no one is investigating this build, so you can stop it whenever you want. So what are your options if a build fails? If it's a test and it's unstable one, and you're not going to investigate it right now, you should put the test as ignore. Okay. What that was. Okay, now the build won't run it, and you should also put a comment here. I put a comment, you should open a bug. Okay, so the Scrum Master can see that now this specific thing is not being tested, and in the bug title put a red test, like that. So QA can ignore the bug. This is a bug for mostly for us and the Scrum Master. And here put the bug number in a comment next to the ignore. So that's the first thing you can do. You can put a specific test in ignore. If the entire build is unstable, or you've checked in something that fails the entire build, then first of all you can roll back your changes. Usually you won't do that. So second of all, you can move the entire build to yellow. So how to do that? You can move builds only if you're an administrator. If you're not, tell me or one of the other. Most of the people are now administrators. You go to the build. That's the home page of the build. Then go to edit configuration, and here you have the move button. Okay, here you can write yellow and select the yellow under the corresponding branch. In this case, that's trunk yellow. It will move it there. When you're done, move it back. In this case, it was built under the Chrome. You can see it here. Okay, web test, Chrome. So again, write Chrome here and find the Chrome under the branch. Also, if someone is checked in and is not available from some reason, for example, he checks in and go home or something like that, so it's possible to undo his changes. Okay, it depends on the failure. Maybe it's something small that you can fix by yourself. Maybe you can talk to him, but you can also undo his changes in the TFS. Send him email. Sorry, your check-in has failed the build. It's okay. Questions until now? Okay, so let's go to the test environment. So I hope this is updated, but this is the test environment. Your test class is running in this process, the VS test. It's when your test starts, it will launch the portal and the Quali server and the other components. All of these components are out of process. They are real processes. You do this by specifying the requisites. Okay, your test class should inherit from QSTestigator, and here you should override the specify environment requisites. And then you can say if you want the portal in your tests, and you have other options here. I'm not going to go all over them. Okay, your test is running under the bin debug of the scenarios. Okay, that's the QS testing scenarios. Next to it, there is the bin debug. So the VS test process, this one, it will run your code from this folder, and all the other processes will run from this folders. There's a website, server, and if you specify, there should be also the execution server. Yeah, execution server here. It will be copied for you. When you change something in the actual code, for example, if I change something in the Portalis code or the server code, I need to compile the assembly that I've changed because we're using file references. Okay, so for example, if I've changed something in the portal, I need to compile this one from inside Visual Studio. No need to go to command line. And then you need to compile your the scenario, sorry, testing scenarios. This one, where your test is. This assembly, the testing assembly, it got file references also to the portal, but that's only for, we don't actually need this reference because remember the portal is running out of process. We need this specifically for the language dictionary, and also this is a file reference. So if you made a change in the portal, remember to compile it, and then just come here and compile. Behind the scenes, it will go to the trunk binaries and copy the recent assembly to the subfolders here, the server for testing or website for testing. When you run your test, I recommend to use the Snaketail utility on the Testigator monitor log. This file gives you a good understanding of what's happening right now. There it is under the bin debug logs, Testigator monitor. So if I start my test, I will run this test, for example. Compile it. Okay, now run it. Then I can go to the Snaketail, and I can see that something is happening. Okay, the asterisk means the test has started, and this gives you also indication even before you see it here. Okay, I was running something else, or wrong shortcut. I was running the MS test and ReShuffle tests together. Let it end. Okay, it's out of sync now. Okay. One more try. Okay. I started this test, and already you can see it's starting. No, it's not. It should be okay without crashing the VBI. Just I was running both of them together. It's not so recommended. Okay, if something goes out of sync and you're running your test like now and nothing much happens, it's usually the VS test process. Right. Thank you. You need to kill the VS test. And usually this solves the problems. Let's run it. See what happens in the Snaketail. Okay, now it's no. It's a new error. Let's try what I suggested. Close the video. Okay, now you see that it's attaching the databases, and soon it will start the server. I've specified that I want to debug the server in my requisites. Here, launch a server debugger. That's why this window is popped. I want to debug it.
When I debug both the test and the server, can I attach it to the same?
Yeah, you can touch the same Visual Studio. There is a bug in this window that popped sometimes. It doesn't show you the debug Visual Studio, but sometimes it does.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. It looks like a bug. Yeah, so if it happens, you can attach it.
It does, but unshift. Unshift.
Okay. On the build server, the tests are running from a different location. Let's see. Let's take this. Okay, I'll just open one of the builds and go to the log. And here, it's using MS Test to run your tests. When you run from Visual Studio, it's not using MS Test, it's using the VS Test. But when you run from MS Test, it will run it from not from the bin debug, but from a different directory. Let's go to one of the build servers. Should be an example. Okay, so in the build server you have your workspace folder, which you can find out by looking at the log of the build. That's the same folder. And under this folder, you have the test results, and your tests are running from this folder. Okay, it's the same structure here. Here's the server and the website for testing. You can see in the artifacts, I'm going over stuff that can help you investigate what's wrong on the build server. So in the artifacts, you can see under the logs, you can see the Testigator monitor, like we saw on my station, and here you can get a good overview of what happened at what time. It's more detailed than the log itself of the build. And you can also see the logs of the server and of the portal itself. You have the screenshots here, but you don't need to come here. You can just click on a test. Let's take an example of a failing test. I'll try to make it half an hour because I see people are starting to fall asleep. So this should be short. Okay, so let's take a build with failures. So when you click on the test itself, you should have here a screenshot. Okay, the screenshot of this test. It's not clickable, this link, but you can copy it to another tab, and then you'll see the screenshot. Also, you can see the HTML of this page, and you have a link of what happened in the server logs specifically for this test. It's not the entire server log. Okay, so in this case, the log was empty. But there is a log created in the server and in the portal for each test. Okay, you can see that in this specific test, the portal restarted 3 times for some reason. Okay. The build configuration, all the build configurations of the web tests, they have the same template in the TeamCity, which means they are the same definition, doing the same thing, except one parameter, which specifies what to run. Usually that's the test class. You can put more than one test class here. You can also specify an entire namespace. Okay, sometimes it's hard to understand just from the logs and artifacts what's the problem, and you need to log into the build server itself. So in this case, you need to go to see on which build server it was running. Usually it's not so relevant because another build is running there and all the results and stuff are changing, so it's hard to log in. So what you should do, you should select one agent, anyone, disable it. I've clicked the agent and now I can disable it. Disable means automatic builds won't start on this agent, but I can manually start my own build. You should put a comment here why you disabled this agent, for example, investigating this and that build. And now you have like your own private agent. Now you can go and run your build on this agent, and when it's ready, you can log into the build server and start researching the problem. You will start usually from finding where it was running on the build server. You can take that from the build log and just look for C here, and that's the location. It's similar on all web tests because they're using the same TFS workspace. Also, you can run the same command in command line from the build server. This is the command that's running the test. And when you run it from the build server, you will see the browser pops, and you will see exactly what happened. This command, it gets all the test method under the class, because the MS Test doesn't have an option to run a test class. So when you specify a test class in your build, it will just translate all the methods into this line. So it will be shorter for you to edit this line and just specify a specific test if you want. It will be much faster. Okay, questions? Okay, so last thing, we will have another session about how to write tests correctly. For now, I just want to talk about a few points. The most important thing is not to use sleep or wait or any kind of delay in your test. Think of your test exactly as your user navigates the browser. Is not waiting for 3 seconds and then clicks on something. Is waiting for something to pop. And there are options for Koiku to show it. Also, maybe it's better if you will show some sample just of, if you're ready, just of a usage of Koiku telling it to find the element for X time. You have something like that? You're muted.
Yes, just let me find it for a second.
Okay. So there are lots of places in code that right now that put delays, and that's not good because some of the build servers are slower, and if your delay is not long enough, it won't work. And it's creating another problem that the builds are starting to be slow. Some of the builds are very slow. So it's not a good practice, and you should use the Koiku, which is built for that. Koiku knows that there are Ajax calls and there are stuff happening asynchronically, and there is a way to tell the Koiku, I want you to click this element, or I want you to select this element for me as soon as it's being shown.
Okay, here is one example. Can you see it?
1 second. Oh, can you zoom a little? Okay.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, this this scenario tries to delete a route, and for example, we can we click on the route, we delete it, and we wait for a message to be shown that the diagram has been refreshed or redrawn, instead of, for example, waiting several seconds and then checking, because this is Koiku will check for 20 seconds every second, and it will continue executing the steps once its condition has been fulfilled.
Okay, can you show the body of this method?
I'm sorry that it won't go to definition. No. Okay, I'll try to find it manually.
Okay.
Yes. You for this method, you send a message.
Can you zoom? Yes.
You send it a message, and it checks whether the element exists and whether the text contains the actual message that we need to show. Because sometimes if it only checks for a specific whether it exists, it can return true when we have a different message, because this save status diff is in the actual top bar, and it shows multiple messages one after the other. So we need to continue with the execution only when the actual message has been shown.
Okay, so the correct way is to use this wait until, give it a delegate, which is like a condition, and when it's true, it will continue, right?
Yes, yes, it will check continually for a specific condition and continue only when it's fulfilled.
Sorry, it's also what?
It will
This is
use.
thread sleep, right?
But it's a short thread sleep, like 100. It's not like 3 seconds and then the button should be there.
The 100 means retries, because it checks every 200 milliseconds.
Okay, so that's the retry.
So you give it like maximum tries.
Not most places, but a lot of places right now you can see a thread sleep or something like that, and the next line assumes that the element is there. And this is not assuming the element.
It's not
Okay, another thing, the last thing, we have a bug in the infra. Sometimes when you run a lot of tests, it usually happens on the build server, but it can also happen on your machine, but usually you're not running the entire class on your machine. So you have a bug that when you reset the database, something fails there. Usually you'll see a failure in WCF because it's a WCF call which fails on the server side. So if you have these type of errors, please tell me, because we're still investigating this. That's it. Any questions? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, after. Bye.